Okay. Are we ready? Good evening. Welcome. Welcome. Prior to us coming back to order, I'd like to refer anybody who would like a translation services to Paula Valbuena, so she'll make an announcement. All right, welcome to the Modesto City Schools 1439th regular board meeting on February 11th, 2020. The meeting is now called to order. This meeting is being videotaped and recorded, and you can view this video of this meeting or past meetings on our website. In closed session, the board gave direction to legal counsel. Please stand and join me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We are pleased to welcome students from Catherine Everett Elementary School. Eugene Burrows, could you take one step forward? Thank you, Eugene. Sixth grader Eugene is a student council representative and traffic patrol member. He is on the Central Valley 49ers youth football team and enjoys being outdoors with his friends. Following graduation, he plans to have a career in construction, working with his brother at their dad's construction business. Thank you, Eugene. Ronan Soto. Could you take one step forward? Thank you, Ronan. Sixth grader Ronan is a member of the student council and a member of traffic patrol. He is an exceptional leader, oftentimes helping the yard duty with recess rodeo. Ronan is always willing to help tutor students in math and is a wonderful peer support. Following graduation, he would like a career as a firefighter or a YouTube content creator. Awesome. Students, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I want to call your attention to the fact that if you wish to address the board during the period for public comment on a subject not on the agenda, you must complete a public presentation request card and submit it to the board president prior to the period for public comment. I've received one card so far. Only those who have submitted cards will be called upon to speak, and no cards will be accepted after the period has begun. Every person who wishes to address the board must fill out a card, and you will find the cards in the lobby. That brings us to announcement. Superintendent.
Thank you, and I'm going to keep it very brief tonight. I first want to say thank you for everyone that's come out this evening. Again, it's always great to see so many happy faces out there working all and supporting our students and our district as a whole. So with that, welcome.
Thank you. And now it's a report of meetings attended by Board of Education members. Do I have any lights? All right. I'm going to start on the left. Mr. Irvin.
Oh, yes. Oh. Well, I attended along with Trustee Lopez. We were judges at the HYLC Hispanic Youth Leadership Council's annual speech contest. And I believe this is 32 years at that the speech contest is going on. So it was a pleasure seeing students from our district and across the county as well, and it was good to serve as a judge there. Also attended the rally, the computer science rally over at Enoch's High School with fellow trustee Walker and Superintendent Noguchi, and that was standing room only. So it was nice to see all of the great progress they've made with computer science, and found out that MJC is offering a 2-year degree in cybersecurity. So that's something our students can look forward to. They decide to go into that field, and I know Mr. Russ there would be happy with that because he was there as well. So those are events that I attended within the last board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. Trustee Walker.
2 events that I can recall, both at Enoch's. The first one was our 8th graders coming in prior to becoming 9th graders, so it's open house night. Again, Enoch's is pretty good about filling the house up. Quite a few, I would argue, pretty close to standalone open in the multipurpose room, then feeds over into the gym. You had staff members from all the different departments talking to parents. Had quite a few good conversations with parents and teachers. And then, of course, the computer science rally, which is my 3rd or 4th year doing this, and it's always standing room only. And as he mentioned, the cybersecurity thing is being built out. I think the other thing that was interesting there is we've had one board agenda I pulled out last summer, where we took it off of consent and brought it up to discussion on creating the Exploring Computer Science class. And that was one of the highlights of sort of what we talked about in that good conversation, how that's being built out. It's really exciting because the kids were excited. I mean, there was no doubt that everybody was having a good time. Ms. Johnson, Principal Moore, has done a fantastic job over there creating that and building that out.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Vice President West.
I attended a very tasty crab feed at Howard Training Center, which is now called Howard Prep. Those students do such an amazing job, and our own Enoch students were helping to serve, and they were just delightful, just pleasant. They introduced them. The kids seemed to have a good time, and I was really proud of the Enoch students for volunteering their time to help with this program.
Thank you, Trustee Newman.
All right, I attended 3 events. I got to judge the Stanislaus County mock trial. So I got to see 2 of our high school teams competing, some great students doing some interesting work, and very impressive. And then I also got to attend the La Loma Career Day and talk about what it's like to be a lawyer. And then I also went to the Mohai Winter Homecomings, which is great. The kids had a lot of fun to watch the floats. So it's fun to watch some of these homecoming events if you have the opportunity.
Trustee Lopez.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Trustee Irvin mentioned, I was a judge with Hispanic Youth Leadership Council. I heard a lot of great speakers. One thing that I do want to highlight is that both James Marshall and Shackelford Elementary just received a grant to work on doing an assessment for safe routes to schools. So I was very fortunate to be a part of one of their planning meetings last week, and we're having one coming up in February as well. And I'll let everyone know the dates when I get that. But we're also getting up with our planning committee for Marshall. So I'm very excited the work that a lot of folks around the table have been doing around that, so that we can also work together, having not only safe schools but safe community, and how kids are getting there to and from.
Thank you, Trustee Lopez. Trustee Brown.
So I was able to slip into the open house at Beyer High School, and was there with my son, who's a graduate of Beyer High School, and we were there for the fundraiser for the robotics team. And fun to see my son's connection with math and science and the students there and the things that they're able to accomplish. He received an invitation to come and speak to the math classes anytime that he's in town. So that is kind of a fun thing. We'll try to extend that to other campuses as well. But just a plug for all of our student organizations. We want to make sure that anytime there's a fundraiser, let the board know. When we can be there to support all of our students in any fundraising capacity, we're happy to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Yes, our student rep wasn't able to attend tonight. He had another event at Enoch's High School that he needed to be in attendance at, so he let me know ahead of time that he wouldn't be here. And then my report is I've attended 3 also. I attended the open house at Gregory High School, which had a full house, standing room only, and they were way outside even for the college night, and that was exciting. Just to give a brief, it was only a half an hour long, and then they were doing a longer one later on in the evening, and it was very well attended. Then to go to the gym and have all the teachers available for students and parents to talk to on any of the courses that were the options at Gregory High School. And then I attended Employees Making a Difference, which I see you're here tonight, so it was really exciting to see your videos and your pictures and hear all about you in that format. It was a wonderful event, and it made us so proud. And we even have, well, we'll get on to that later, but I really enjoyed that a lot, just to be in attendance to it with the superintendent and some of our staff. And then today I attended the Clergy Council meeting, which is the MPD and Sheriff's Department and CHP, along with many of the pastors in town, meet together once a month, and they just talk about some of the issues that are going on in our community and how can we all work together to ensure that if something happens, an emergency happens, that there's people available to talk to. So some of the comments that were made today was that in this county has one of the most unique relationships between the law enforcement and the community and the Clergy Council, in that it has created a really helpful dialogue between the two to ensure if something comes up, they have an opportunity to talk because the relationships are already built. So others around, including pastors and other law enforcement around the state and nation, are envious of what we have going on here. So that was just a really neat thing to hear today, and how we work with the schools and any information they want from us as well. So it's been really a good meeting today. So on to our next item, which are recognitions. So we're going on to special recognition. I'll turn it over to Krista Noonan.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out, and good evening, board and cabinet. So the first recognition that we're doing is the special recognition portion, and it's to commemorate Black History Month, which is actually the entire month of February. This is actually the 44th year of Black History Month being celebrated on a national basis, which is really great to commemorate that. So tonight, what I thought would be nice, we have a proclamation, which is also part of the consent agenda. But I also thought it would be an ideal opportunity to highlight all of the activities and special programs and the efforts that our Black student unions are leading at various schools. So what we did, Mady Herrera helped me, as well as Danielle Hinkle, and we reached out to several of the BSUs, as we call them, at Enoch's, Johansen, and Davis high schools. So what I'd like to do is first I'm going to introduce who we have here from the Black student unions who are representing, and then we're going to have 2 students come up and actually give you their perspective of how much they enjoy it and the different experiences that they're involved in. So if you could stand when I read your name, and then what I'll do afterwards, just so everybody who's here knows, I'll have you all come up to take a photo, but for now, go ahead and just stand at your seat, and then we'll have you come up. So from Johansen High School, we have Nicole Evans. She's a Black Student Union advisor. And then we have Maurice Chambers, who's also a BSU advisor. Bless you. And we have Nia Brown, who is one of the students who'll be speaking. Then from Davis High School, we have Reynaldo Rucker, who's a BSU advisor. And we have Destiny Prunty, and then Noah White. And then from Enoch's High School, we have Elizabeth Garman. She's a BSU advisor. And then Yasmin Talley and Sophia Talley. And Yasmin will actually be one of the students speaking as well. So thank you for joining us, and we'll definitely have you come up in just a little bit to take photos. But why don't I go ahead and invite Nia Brown and Yasmin Talley to come up to the podium. They're going to go through a PowerPoint that they've prepared, which highlights several, like I said, of their different experiences. And then after they're done speaking, I have a brief, about a 2-minute video from one of the tours that you're going to see in their PowerPoint. But I thought it'd be really nice to show that. And Trustee Irvin actually was on that tour as well. And I'm sure he can attest to how great it was. So yeah, feel free to go ahead and start.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nia Brown. I'm the Vice President of the UBSUC Youth Board Organization.
Hi, I'm Yasmin Talley. I am the current president of the BSU at James C. Enox High School, and I'm also the secretary of the United Black Student Unions of California for the state board.
So the UBSUC has been dedicated to the leadership and development of African American high school students for 45 years. The purpose of the UBSUC is to promote the development of cooperative efforts among schools and communities, and to instill leadership and just giving back to the community and the students.
Now, between the whole state, it is divided up into 3 regions. We are part of the central region, and so each of the regions have an initiative. The northern region being that they establish a BSU on every campus. The central region being that we have a connection to our high school students, to our college students, and our southern region being to increase voting rates within the Black community.
So our initiative is Central Region, so it's the college pipeline from high school. So this is what we've done to achieve that initiative.
We have attended the UCAN College Fair. Now, this includes a bunch of historically Black colleges and universities there. I did get offered a few spots just right on the dot from colleges and universities. All you have to do is bring your transcript and your official SAT or ACT scores, and you get accepted on the spot. So it's a nice way for African American students to get accepted into colleges.
It's really great HBCU exposure as well. I had no clue what a HBCU was until I went on this trip, which is really good because that's where I plan to go after high school.
Yay. Cool. And so within our community, we actually did a BSU Cares where we had a month period of time where we would ask people to give out donations when it comes down to feminine products, deodorant, anything that you need to survive, so we can give to the homeless. And so we actually reached out to Stan State to invite some of their BSU students to come and help us. So that was another way where we reached our initiative, was where we can actually communicate to them and actually meet them in person and bond with them. And so that was one more thing.
We gave back to the community. It was a lot of fun. We created care packages, so it was a really good experience. Ethnic Studies. So this was really fun. The Ethnic Studies event was at Fresno State. Pretty much we learned about the significance of ethnic studies, and then we got to meet people who fought for that ethnic studies to be implemented in colleges. We got to meet the professors of ethnic studies at Fresno State, which is all women, they're all women professors at their ethnic studies. So it's a really cool experience. It was really cool.
And so that was another way was we were able to talk to more college students, which hits the initiative again. And we also presented ourselves. Nia and I also presented along with a bunch of students that are here today.
Okay, so this one is amazing. This is the HBCU college tour. Now, this college tour was so special because, like I said, the HBCU, I never knew what it was. First, I got to go to the HBCU UCAN in Stockton. So then we, fundraised, we got funding, and we got an opportunity to go to colleges. So we went to Morehouse College, we went to Spelman College, we went to Clark Atlanta University, we went to Tuskegee University and Alabama State University, which was so cool because we got to meet the students there, we got to meet the professors, we got to see what college life was like in person. And it was so cool to go in a different state. We got to meet a lot of students. I have a lot of connections with a lot of college students at those colleges, and it broadened my horizons. And it was such a, I can't even put in words. It's really a special experience, and I'm really excited for you guys to see the video. It was a lot of fun.
And so other events in 2020 that we have include the Hate You Give. Now this was an event where the first 25 students that made it to the event got free books. And so it was also showing the screening of the movie The Hate You Give. Also the Court Watch. Now this was one of my favorite trips. And so we went to San Francisco bright and early, and we got to meet a criminal justice attorney. And so he basically showed us into the justice system of how there is injustice within colored people in our justice system. And so it was a nice peek into, you know, the way our legal system is flawed in a sense. And so it was nice to get that first way perspective on that trip. Yes. Yes, we got to sit in a courtroom.
We got to watch trials too in appeals, and it was really interesting. Okay, so this is the roundtable. The roundtable was an event that we got to pretty much get more leadership training. Like BSU officers went, we got to kind of plan out our year, what we want to do for this coming year, and like, you know, what we want to do for our community. We got to meet with CSU Monterey Bay, like an official from there. We got to learn more about scholarships in college, and we also got to talk to the NAACP president, Mrs. Bird, and it was a really good experience, and you know, it just really motivated us to keep going and keep pushing for our cause.
And with the CSU Monterey Bay, there was this lady, she was very nice, Miss Kimberly. She actually explained the requirements that you need to get into a CSU. So she broke it down with the A through G requirements and took it step by step to explain to us what we need to get into a CSU.
That's great.
Yes. And so our goal is to get to the United Black Student Unions of California State Convention. Now, Nia and I are the first from our schools to actually become state officers. So she is the first vice president, I am the secretary. And so with that, it is a 3-day convention down in LA this year. Last year it was in Bakersfield. And so our goal is to get a bunch of our students down there to LA. And it would be amazing because we've been working hard. We're on conference calls for a long time trying to organize. We actually went down to LA with Mrs. Garman to organize the event more, and so it would be an honor if we can bring as many students as we can to the central region down to LA.
Yes, and the UBSUC, it really like pretty much it motivates us to these events, because without this UBSUC, we wouldn't get a lot of these events done, but because of the training that they instill in us, we really we got all these events done, and we keep continuing to get these events done, so it's really important to us.
And you meet a lot of people, you are building networking connections, and sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so it is a nice way to network with other people. And so how you guys can help is fund us for transportation. Yes.
Help get us down there, please.
Please. Thank you.
Happy Black History Month.
Thank you so much, Nia and Yasmin. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to show you a little brief, like about 2 minutes snippet from the HBCU tour. I do want to say that this video was put together by the students. It's about a 9-minute video. If you want to see the whole thing, just email me and I can send you the link. Or actually, I'll put it in one of your board communications so you can watch the entire video.
Okay.
Hopefully. Marching band footage. This is Murphy's Law, right? Every time you test something, and then you can do it. Oh, it's working on those, just not that one? Oh, okay.
All right.
Is it showing on yours here?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. These are at Tuskegee University is where this footage was shot.
All right, how do you think this homecoming game has been going so far?
I feel like it's gonna be lit. I'm really excited. I like the energy. Really. Yeah, I like it. I like this. I like this. So, how do you guys like it so far?
I love it.
My name's Envy. Hi, I'm Yasmin. Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Jasper. I would say this trip honestly was a very big eye opener. Like I already know I wanted to go to an HBCU, but this just honestly opened it up more. I don't really specifically. My favorite college I'll be toured is Morehouse. I really enjoyed Morehouse. My second one would have to be Tuskegee. They really were hype, and I like that energy. So yeah, I know the HBCU life is gonna be lit. So
How like it was kind of like a culture shock. There's like so many, like we saw so many people like us, and there's like so many things that like we couldn't do at home that we could do over there. And it was just like so amazing. And then we met a lot of new people.
On the college tour, like they all very similar in similar shoes like you know, we're all growing up in predominantly not black schools, and like getting to see HBCUs was like really cool doing as a group. So yeah.
Great. Nicely done. So at this point, let's give a hand. So at this point, if everyone who's representing the BSUs, both students and advisors, if you could come over to where Becky Fortuna is, and then Trustee Irvin and Superintendent Noguchi, if you'd like to come down for the photo, that'd be great.
What's good, y'all? Stefan G, the host and creator of Culture Talk.
What's good, y'all? It's Locke Jacobs, host of Culture Talk.
Thank you. It did the autoplay on the, yeah. Great. Thank you, everyone. So next up on our recognition is our character education recognition, and I'd like to invite Elliott Senior Daisy Jasmine Rodriguez. She's being recognized for the character trait of initiative, and we have Elliott teacher Laura Brose, who's here to tell us about Daisy.
Do you want to come up here? You too can talk on the microphone. Yeah. Our next contestant on The Price is Right. This is Miss Franca. I'm Laura Brose, and this is our amazing student, Daisy. I just have to say, every day that she comes in, sorry, girlfriend, Katy Perry couldn't be here today. My bad. I'm so sorry. She loves Katy Perry, and she is always in the best of the best mood. She's a true inspiration. She is just a go-getter. And in 2 weeks, what's happening? Less than
graduating.
Wait, what?
Early graduation.
Yeah. She's early graduating. We are so absolutely proud of her. She's absolutely amazing, and she's gonna go so far. And she just makes me laugh every single day, no matter what. She keeps going every day, 1 foot in front of the other, 1 foot in front of the other. And next time I'll have Katy Perry here, girlfriend.
Well, congratulations.
You're like,
you said it all. Oh, great. And we have Trustee Brown, who's presenting the award for initiative, and then Superintendent Noguchi, if you'd also like to go for the photo. That's so great. Congratulations. Actually, do you want to stay over there because we're going to do the? Okay, gotcha. Okay. So next up, we have quite a large group, which I'm very excited to announce. For tonight's MCS Heroes, we're recognizing all of the district employees who were nominated as part of Employees Making a Difference. Employees Making a Difference honors outstanding classified employees in 5 different categories, and that's child nutrition, office and technical, paraeducators, support/security services, and maintenance and operations. This is actually a program that's administered by the County Office of Education, but it's also done through the Association of California Superintendents and Administrators. And as a district, we had 14 total nominees. So I was really excited by the participation at all of the different schools. But as a district, due to the size of our attendance, the maximum amount of employees we could advance were 4 to the county level. But we really wanted to make sure that we recognized all of the nominees because it was a very difficult selection procedure that we went through. So not everyone could be here tonight who are among those 14, but I see Trustee Marks and Trustee West are in front as well, and then Dr. Noguchi, if you'd like to go join them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to read off everyone's names. Please come up as I read your name, and the trustees will give you the award that we've prepared for you. So first, and I'm doing it in alphabetical order, just so everyone knows. So, so first we have Ahmed Al-Bayati. I hope I said your name correctly. Ahmed is a bilingual instructional paraprofessional from Davis High School. Congratulations, Ahmed. And then we have Rose Cardenas, who's a bus operator from Transportation. Hey, Rose. Then we have Jordan Crook, who's the lead custodian at Johansen High School. And next up, we have Diane Hepner, student records clerk at Robertson Rose Elementary. And then we have Julie John, instructional paraprofessional from Roosevelt Junior High. And we have Shauna Morgan, instructional paraprofessional from Bayer High with her little one. Next, we have Priscilla Sablin, instructional paraprofessional from Burbank Elementary. And then we have Vicki Souza, campus supervisor from La Loma Junior High. And then Lupe Valadez, a cold food technician from Nutrition Services. And last but certainly not least, we have Miguel Vargas, head custodian from Wilson Elementary. And I do want to call out specifically the 4 that we had that advanced to the county were Diane Hepner, Julie John, Lupe Valadez, and Miguel Vargas. And then subsequently, hold your applause because it gets even more exciting. Then Diane Hepner and Julie John, they actually were selected by the county to be advanced to be considered at the statewide level as well. So we're waiting to hear on those results. So congratulations. I think you need to make a pyramid. Great. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you for all your work. And that's everything. Oh, and thank you to everyone, too, who nominated all the staff. We had principals. We also had direct supervisors who nominated them. So thank you. I know several of the principals are here as well. So thank you for all that you did.
Thank you. We'll take a moment while many of you would like to go home to be with your families. So we'll move on to the approval of the consent agenda. I have one item to move to discussion action. AR 6143, and it'll probably go on the end of the agenda with the BP, the board policy AR BP 6143. So it's the last 6143, it's B8. And then I also have two board policies that I would like to take off just to vote no on. I don't need to make a comment. I had voted no on them in a previous. So they are the two that I just want to pull off to vote no on, are board policy 6145.2 and the AR that goes with that. Same number. Their athletic competition are the two. So, and then we'll place that on that discussion when we do the order of the discussion action items. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda without those three items?
D, and what were the two you wanted to vote no on? D.
BP, board policy 6145.2.
Is there a number, Cindy?
It's,
a D?
oh, let's
Like
see.
the other one was D8.
Yeah, good question. I did not find them to say that. I can find it really quickly. 6145.
Oh, D30? Athletic
Yes,
competition?
yes, D30. As D like in David, yes. And 29 as well, you're correct. So those two. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? I'll take a motion.
I'll move.
Trustee West, seconded by Trustee Newman. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none? Yes.
I think it's important to make sure the public is aware of one of the things that happened in consent. Mr. Zerly, would you tell us about the invitation to bid related to bond funds at one of our elementary schools? See if I can find it. C4.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for thank you for pointing that out, and thank you to the board for authorizing approval of authorization for staff to seek bids for Wilson Elementary cafeteria replacement. As you know, this has been on the board's priority list for some time. We are happy to be seeking bids for this, and this will be the first. This will be kind of our model for future elementary cafeterias to come. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Back to item, and then on board policy 6145.2 and AR 6145.2, which I'll read the actual, what it says. They are approval of second reading of proposed draft of board policies on athletic competition.
I move for approval.
Trustee Newman moves for approval, seconded by Trustee Lopez. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. 6-1 with Mark's dissenting. Moving on to item approval of the order of discussion action item. So we'll need to move the AR 6143 to the last. I propose we put it right after B8, so that it goes together. So it'll be B8A. So it goes just, so it'll go with the board policy. Do I have a motion? Trustee Walker? Okay, Trustee Walker moves to put it there, seconded by Trustee, do I have a second? Seconded by Trustee Newman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then the order of all the discussion action items, I guess now we'll vote on all those. Moved by Trustee Walker, seconded by Trustee Brown for the discussion action items for the order. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Seeing it passes unanimously. Moving on to period for public presentation. Katrina Van Walterop. I hope I said it correct, your last name, Katrina. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. President Marks, members of the board, Dr. Noguchi, my name is Katrina Van Waltrop, and I am the chairperson for K-8 Instrumental Music. I'm here to invite you to the 2020 Modesto City Schools Elementary Music Festival, March 17th, 18th, and 19th at the Johansson High School Gymnasium. Over these 3 nights, 1,472 band and orchestra students from every elementary school will be performing together. I hope you can attend one of the evening performance or a morning rehearsal. Thank you for your continued support of our program. If you have any questions, I have an invitation, has the times, the schools, the days. My email's at the bottom if you have any questions. And if you come in the morning and tune a string instrument, we'd love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Okay, moving on to item B1, our student representative report, which Arnav is unable to be here tonight. So item B2, approval of resolution 19/20-13, school board resolution in support of Proposition 13, public preschool, K-12, and College Health and Safety Bond Act of 2020. Mr. Associate Superintendent Zerly.
Thank you, President Marks. Good evening, trustees. We've been asked by our legislative advocacy partners to pass a resolution from our board in support of Proposition 13, as mentioned by President Marks, which would be provide facility funds for preschool, K-12, and College Health and Safety Bond Act. We've seen firsthand here with a successful local bond measure and also a successful district contribution of funds towards facilities. We've seen what those dollars can do to improve our school sites. And if successful, Proposition 13 would and could provide additional resources that would make our local dollars stretch farther. Interesting about this is the name or the number in and of itself. The bond measure was assigned the number 13 by the Secretary of State. They annually use sequencing requirements. There's been other Proposition 13s on the ballot, but this does not have any connection to local property tax effects. It is separate and distinct from the original 1978 Proposition 13, and like prior state bonds, this particular statewide bond measure would not raise any local property taxes or state taxes.
That's great. So, are there any questions from the board? Trustee Walker.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I've gone out and talked to many members of the community about this. I have absolute faith in our ability to manage our bond, but the members of the community I've talked to have specifically told me they do not want to support this, so I will represent their vote tonight in a no.
All right. Trustee Brown.
Well, I'm not going to be shy in supporting this. I think it's important that we as a community do everything that we can to leverage the money that we're spending with our local bond funds by taking advantage of opportunities that come from the state to leverage those funds and help us do more with what we have. So I'm going to support this, and I encourage others. I am very frustrated with the placement of the number 13 on this, and we could see from the beginning that the confusion caused some negative polling. And even if this doesn't pass, I want my voice to be on record of supporting what we're doing so well in our district with funds that we can leverage from the state as well. So thank you.
Trustee Lopez.
I want to join Trustee Brown on this and supporting this. I think that it's in our best interest to see how we can, I mean, everyone has seen it, has seen our necessities for the district and infrastructure. And if we can make that money go further and include other things that with our existing bonds, we will try to get to, but it seems very far off into the distance. Hopefully with this that we can get something additional to what we got already. So I'm definitely 100% in support of this as well.
Thank you, Trustee Lopez. Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, back to the board for comments. So I'll make a comment. I am opposed to taxes, but this would benefit our district because we just passed a bond, a local bond, as Trustee Brown just said and Trustee Lopez, but to be able to put some money into our own facilities and allow our local tax dollars to multiply is much more beneficial than not having that. So I am in favor of this so that we can have more opportunities to improve our school district, I believe. And that's correct. We would, according to how it was written, it looks like we would be able to get in that pool of those wishing to add to their facilities. And so I'm going to vote yes on this. So is there any other comments from board members? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Trustee Brown to approve, seconded by Trustee Lopez. And let me read I should read it again before we vote. It's a resolution, so we're gonna, hold on, let me just get to this spot. It's approval of resolution 19/20-13, school board resolution in support of Proposition 13, which is Public Preschool, K-12, and College Health and Safety Bond Act of 2020. So the superintendent will read off the roll.
Trustee Brown?
Aye.
Trustee Lopez?
Aye.
Trustee Newman?
Aye.
President Marks?
Aye.
Vice President West?
Aye.
Trustee Walker?
No.
And Trustee Irvin?
Aye.
So it passes 6-1. Thank you. Moving on to item B3, report of the governor's 2020-21 to 21 budget proposal. Associate Superintendent Mr. Zerly.
Thank you. On January 10th of this year, 2020, the governor released his proposed budget for the fiscal year 2021, and obviously we have vested information in the education funding that is part of the governor's budget proposal. On January 16th, staff, including our labor partners, went to Sacramento to receive a presentation from School Services of California, which is what we will review with you this evening. That was a 4-hour workshop, and so what I've done is I've tried to condense it into a few minutes for what I think is important to the board as we move forward towards final budget adoption this June. The next time you will see these numbers or see budget numbers will be the first board meeting in June when we bring you the preliminary budget proposal. And so this is kind of give you some context of what we're doing in anticipation of building that budget on the revenue side. And so what we learned, and I just want to point out, this is not our normal template for presentations. School Services allows us the opportunity to use their presentation. This is their presentation. As long as we keep the copyright on there, we give them credit for it. They allow us to use this presentation back in our local agencies. And so you can see, though, what I've done is I've tried to use a different font to highlight what I think is important on the individual slides as we move forward. What we found out this year with Governor Newsom is very different than a year ago. A year ago, he just assumed his first term, or his first year as governor. And in all intents and purposes, it was a budget very much like Governor Brown in the way education was funded and the priority that was given to education. This year, we're seeing a little different Governor Newsom and how Governor Newsom may have some other commitments towards the dollars than just Proposition 98. Last year, we were very encouraged by the initial proposal to reduce our employer pension liability. We were hopeful that will continue forward into the 2021 budget year. At this point in time, that does not. And as you can see here, school services and we do concur that we face increased demands on our resources going into 2021 with fewer new flexible resources. And we'll talk about that as we go through this presentation. So Proposition 98, if we could spend a whole day on Proposition 98 and the calculations, but really it guarantees that education gets a certain percentage of the budget. It's about 40%. And so it provides, in many cases, it provides a ceiling and not a floor. We would prefer it to be a floor that could go up, but Proposition 98 in this particular case is providing a ceiling. We went to superintendent and I and Associate Superintendent Mr. Herbst went to our Cal SSD conference, and we heard from our lobbyists. We heard from CSBA, we heard from AXA, and their initial response was Governor Newsom gave us what he was required to give us and nothing more. So you can see kind of the difference between Governor Newsom, at least right now, and prior Governor Brown administrations. And you can see on this slide what we believe is possibly where the governor and his administration is going is more focus on categorical grant programs, bringing back categorical grant programs or dollars given to districts for a specific purpose. So the local control funding formula, which drives the dollars that are base dollars and our supplemental concentration grant dollars, gets a $1.2 billion increase. Proposition 98, and you'll see in a slide coming up, Proposition 98 got a $3 billion increase from year over year. Of that, $1.2 billion goes to the local control funding formula, and that equates to a 2.29% statutory COLA. And then you can see for how this goes, it's about $231 per pupil, and that depends on the district. We're not an average district because we have a higher concentration of unduplicated pupil students, so we receive more concentration grant funds than the average district. But these are just, when you see this from school services, these are statewide estimates, and our results are a little bit different. These are our funding factors for the grade spans for the local control funding formula, and I put these up here because President Marks asked a question, I believe, at the last board meeting about how much we receive per pupil. And so these are the base grants that we receive per pupil by each grade span. And then we get adjustments added to K3 for class sizes for being at 24:1, and then the high school base grant gets an adjustment for CTE programs. And so you can see it goes from $7,997 per student to $9,791 per student. That is before supplemental concentration. So you take that and add these numbers to it. So if you're looking at a 10th grader, that is an unduplicated pupil percentage student. You would add up the bottom row, so you can see we get about $15,000 for that student, assuming it is a student that generates both supplemental and concentration grant funds. So it varies, but if you ever want to know how much we receive per pupil, just add up these rows per grade span, and that's what we receive for the majority of our students, because the majority of our students are unduplicated pupil students. Special education is of interest to us, and it's nice to see that the administration has finally recognized that special education is underfunded. And so we were encouraged last year, as you see here, included $645 million last year in new resources, and you can see what it was used for. It was to bring the lowest SELPAs up to statewide target rate, which is us. Our SELPA was below the statewide target rate, so that would be us. And then also $493 million in flexible one-time funds to districts for preschoolers with an IEP. And so what interesting thing about these dollars were, for the state of California, in order to meet their MOE, which is the maintenance of effort, their federal maintenance of effort, they categorize these as ongoing state dollars. But for us, They were, as you can see here, specific allocation to districts is dependent upon further discussion. So a year ago, we knew we were getting these dollars, or this year we knew we were getting these dollars, but we can only count them as one time. And the state of California in their funding mechanism gets to, and they're saying these are ongoing dollars. So that's kind of a debate we're having with Sacramento. Is it one time? Is it ongoing? But for this year, the state is using that same $645 million in an ongoing manner to further increase the special education base rates from the what you see there is the average. And then also we're getting a proposal for another one-time funding for preschoolers with IEPs at $250 million. We'll talk about that in a minute. So for us, about halfway down this slide, we would fall into the $640 to $680 per pupil for special education students if this proposal gets adopted. Because we were funded and at below the average for a SELPA. And again, as that last point points out, this is great news. I mean, this is the first time in my career that a focus has been put on special education funding. You know, when I come here and I give a budget report or a budget update, we talk about a contribution that's required to special education. It's not because our costs are out of control, it's because our funding is not keeping pace with the students that are receiving the program for the students that they need. And then again, there is some dollars in this budget for preschoolers. Interesting thing about our preschoolers with an IEP, we've run this preschool program forever, and prior to this current year, we've never received a dollar in income for these students. So again, this is just wonderful that we're talking about it. However, for this year, it's one time, and it's not unrestricted. It comes with the requirement that we have to use these one-time funds at the moment to increase or improve services. This current year we're in, 1920, there was not that attachment to it. They could be used for any purpose for those students. But now the proposal is that these dollars for preschoolers have to be used to increase or improve services. How do you do that on a one-time basis and keep that going? That's something that we're looking for trailer language that will clear this up in the next couple months. School employer pension relief, as I talked about, we're very appreciative in the current year what we received, a little over $3 billion to reduce our employer contribution. And then you can see that for this year, Governor Newsom and his administration has decided at the moment to invest surplus funds in other priority areas such as green technology, homelessness, and housing. Obviously, there's a lot of suggestions for how the state can spend their dollars. There's a lot of other areas outside of education, but we would be very happy if this pension relief were to continue. However, this current year's relief continues into next year as well, and we're very appreciative of that. CalSTRS, you can see here that one good thing about CalSTRS is that in 2021, the increases end. So it's in legislation. Of course, legislation can change at any time, but the current increases that we've seen sunset in 2020-21, and then any adjustments after that are limited to 1% annually, but that can change at any time. And then you can see CalPERS. CalPERS continues to be projected to go up. This is not in legislation, unlike STRS. CalPERS has their own board that sets their rates. And so you can see where we're going through 26, 27 currently. There's a lot of talk about funding and funding commitments and how much does it go and where does it go. And one of our concern when we're talking about a 2.25% COLA is our costs on the normal are greater than that. And so that does not that does not give us enough to cover just our basic cost increases, not to mention any loss of funding that we have in our multi-year projection due to enrollment, declining enrollment. So this is a concern of ours. It's something that we'll be watching as we move forward in the next few months. School facilities funding. Thank you for passing the resolution, and this just talks about the resolution. This talks about Proposition 13. It will appear on the March 2020 ballot as Proposition 13, and then you can see here the impacts of that and where the dollars would go. What's not in the budget? Increased local control funding formula targets. So if you go back to those base rates, we all know in the education community that our base rates are not high enough for us to compete across the country. That is not included in the current budget proposal. Payments to reduce CalSTRS and CalPERS passed this year, and then one-time discretionary grants. A discretionary grant is something that we get to choose how we're going to spend those dollars. We believe we're going to see a push to one-time funding, not discretionary. It will be for certain purposes. On the CalSTRS and CalPERS, we do, after the governor released his proposal, Speaker Rendon came out and he made a statement that he was disappointed there wasn't additional funding for education to reduce the pension liabilities, and he said he will be working to add additional funding through the process over the next couple months for school districts. But right now, there's nothing in the proposal at this point in time. So $3 billion sounds like a lot of money. I mean, it's great to get $3 billion more than the prior year, but you can see in the current year versus the proposal year of how that goes. $3 billion this year resulted in an ongoing 3.26% increase, or about $2 billion of that came through that, and then the special education relief that we had. Now this year, the $3 billion is being allocated through a 2.29% ongoing COLA, which is only about $1.2 million, as I stated earlier in the slide. So you can see the difference in what the difference in a COLA makes. $3 billion on the left is not the same as $3 billion on the right as far as meeting our operational needs. This is the dartboard that we use. Again, it has our base rates that you can see there, and then the statutory COLA. Current year, 3.26%, and you can see what we're using in our multi-year projection for the next 3 years, 2.29%, 2.71%, and 2.82%. So when the budget was adopted, when the state adopted their budget and we did our multi-year projection to you, we were projecting a 3%. We were projecting a 3% based on this chart. I'm sorry, I'm messing that up. Based on this chart, a year ago, 2021 said 3%, and that's what we were using for our projection. In November, we were hearing the LAO say, wait a minute, that could be under 2%. We're fortunate that the governor's proposal has it now at 2.29%. But you can see the volatility just in a matter of a few months when we're bringing a multi-year projection to you, the percentage change based on how the state's economy is doing. Again, this question came up, I believe, by President Marks. When we presented our audit report on our reserve level, this shows you from 17-18, which is the last certified year that they have. You can see the percentages as an ending fund balance for the different districts. We would be considered, even though we're not unified, we would be considered like the unified school districts, or 16.98% average net ending fund balance. Late start times, you're probably wondering why this is in here, but that goes into effect on July 1, 2022. And what that means is a middle school and high schools cannot operate or start sooner than 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. The impact on us is going to be transportation. As you can see, maximizing routes and drivers will be of utmost importance. We're currently going through a transportation study to determine our routes, to review our routes, review our start times, and see how we can comply in 22 with the later start times for middle school and high school. But you can see the impacts, potential impacts on our budget here for transportation and food services that we're going to have to monitor as we move through complying with that new law. So closing thoughts, again, Governor Newsom is not Governor Brown. He has priorities. I mean, he has his own priorities, which in many cases is early childhood education, which does impact us, and we are very grateful for the governor to have a priority of early childhood education. But you can just see here that this governor is creating one-time programs, which is different than Governor Brown. We'll see how that plays out. This is only the first step. So there is negotiation that's going to go on in the next 2 to 3 months in Sacramento when legislators get to provide their input and add things and work with the governor on where it can be added. It is a first step, but we won't bring a projected budget to you till June, so we wanted you to see exactly what was in the governor's proposal for us.
All right, any questions from board members? Trustee Irvin?
And looking at the funding for special education, did he just basically rob Peter to pay Paul? That's how I kind of read into it, that it wasn't no really new money, just shift some dollars from Peter to pay Paul.
You could make that assumption because what he's doing is taking the current year allocation and then rolling that over into next year. This is what I was talking about earlier about, is it one time or ongoing? So it's not as if we now got the benefit of this year's $600 million and next year another $600 million added to that. He's taking that one-time infusion this year and then rolling that into the next proposal to do something else with it. So it could be, you could make that assumption as what you're suggesting.
Trustee Brown?
Yes, Mr. Zerli, I'm going to ask for some historical perspective. I know the education community is going to be lobbying hard to see a continuation of the one-time money we saw towards the pension relief. In history, the May revise, has it typically been reduced or is it sometimes increased? And what is the likelihood that we might see some of that money come back if the lobbying is strong enough?
We have not seen a reduction in May in a number of years, probably a decade, or if not more, since we've come out of the recession. So the likelihood that it's less is probably very, very small. It in all likelihood it'd be more. And I think this governor is going to wait to see how, as you know, and have probably read, the governor has a very large surplus of funds in the state budget right now, and so I think the governor will be prudent and will add to this. It definitely won't be less, and if the economy keeps moving at the current pace, maybe the problem we have is our Proposition 98, the 2% is governed by specific calculations. That's probably not going to change a lot, but what could change is dollars that are then added on top of that for pension relief or for something else. And so I think Sacramento knows what a benefit that was this year to many school districts, ourselves included, and I would be surprised if that's not, in the end, somewhere there's additional funds for that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, out to the public. Any comments from the public on the governor's budget? Seeing, oh, Trustee Walker, back for, I don't see anyone coming up, so back to the board for comments. Trustee Walker?
I think this is the, for those of us who've been here since I've been elected, this is the budget that I've been scared about for a lot of years. And I think I mentioned earlier, you break this $1.2 billion number down across the state, essentially comes out to $200 per student, 185 instructional days. The governor's essentially giving you $1 a day per student. I think it's really disingenuous, especially when you look at where California is funding for students. He may have priorities, but they're not really frustrating. Maintenance of effort. I'd like to see an AP economics teacher explain this without his head exploding. It's very tricky math. One-time money, again, I think is disingenuous. And then the late start time. I think what I'm far more concerned about relative to the transportation is what effect it has on our students. And I think when you especially look at sort of the high achievers, I think there's the most negative impact there when you look at IB programs, AP students, students looking for a 0 period and 8th period to get A through G credits. I think, again, it's very disingenuous to take an idea that was jinky at best and then pass it that causes us budget consternation. But it really does lean on our high achieving students and the ability to make up classes and credits how you need to. And the impact on parents, I think, is yet to be seen. I think overall, the idea that I'm disappointed would be a gross understatement. This is the budget, and I think all your red indicates it. Just read the red in the report. I mean, I think it's just a litany of worries that those of us who have been looking at these budgets for years and years have been worried about. And it keeps us at 43rd, 45th in the country in funding with all the given issues we have. Very disappointing, and I'll leave it there.
Well, and I'll just make a short comment on, I am concerned about the lack of funding for the CalSTRS and CalPERS and the contribution to that. But hopefully he will change his mind or add to it as May comes around with the extra that he has. And then I do appreciate the fact that he added some funds for our special ed students. This is the first time I've ever seen a governor add, and it's not a lot compared to the need, but it is quite a lot compared to past governors. And so I have to say thank you for that, because at least it's going to help us with some of the deficit spending that we've had in that area. But I just appreciate that he's thinking about that. But his priorities are not the same as Governor Brown's were. And Governor Brown really did, he did rob Peter to pay Paul. He did pass some propositions and said, oh, this will be for you for these items. And then he said, oh, no, by the way, we're going to use it to pay for other items. So he did kind of play a game with us because he knew the public would support public education in some of his propositions. But so we'll see. I think when May comes around, it'll be interesting to see where this rolls out and where it actually ends up. But I'm appreciative that at least we're having budgets before August. As the past where we had them so late in the year, it was difficult for us to plan and not know, but at least he'll let us know. Did you have another comment? No? All right. Seeing none, this was a report. So we're moving on to, thank you so much, Mr. Zerly. Moving on to the report on department reorganizations, fiscal curriculum and instruction, and professional development, information and educational technology services. And this looks like it's going to be Associate Superintendents Zerly, Odell, and Selkin.
That is correct. And I will be starting. So good evening, President Marks and board members, Dr. Noguchi, and my colleagues that are still here. Just like you said, that is quite a mouthful. We're going to present to you 3 division reorganizations within this one presentation. And what I'd like to say is that each one of us will go, and then we have created a time for you to ask questions at the very end. Our purpose tonight is to ensure that we have provided the identity of the let me start again. We've identified the purpose of the reorganization for each one of our divisions. We're going to provide you perspective on the timeline and the tasks that have occurred within the work that has brought us to this point with you. We'll review the positions. We'll talk about those next steps. And again, we'll give you time to have discussion and comments. So I'm actually going first, and we're going to be talking about the reorganization of the Curriculum and Instruction and Professional Development Division. I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time looking at the goals that we have here and point out that a big part of this work, as we've been talking about multiple times now, is this work around 1.3. Not only do we want to provide great instruction first time for all of our students, but we have a particular need to turn to the instruction of English learners and ensure that they have equity and access to our curriculum and the very best that we can give them. So that is definitely a part of this restructuring. Also, goal 2, that's part of our department. It's the PD department. And again, I wanted to point out to you that we're working to target professional development for leaders, restorative practices, early literacy, mathematics, as well as that English language development. So at the beginning of the year, when everybody came back for this fall, I started talking with the team in terms of the coaches themselves. How did they feel about their position? Some of the coaches also have some split positions of curriculum coordinators, talking with principals and others, like what is working here? What is not working? What do you love about your job? What could we do better? And how do we even know that it's working? What kind of data do we have that shows where our bright spots are? And what we found was the current model that we've been working under, it's not as good as it can be. For example, like I just said, we have coordinators that are also coaches, so they're really stretched with trying to prepare professional development and work through adoptions. At the same time, they're supposed to be at sites and helping the teachers in the classroom. So there was quite a bit of struggle of what hat are they wearing today and trying to get all this very important work done. So in general, we found that the current structure just wasn't working. It could be a lot better than it was. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some really wonderful things that are happening, but in general, we needed to fix this structure that we have. For example, in K6, we have this model, and we call it tandem teaching, if you've heard that, and it does seem to be working. We have folks that are on a wait list to get to coaches to be provided some in the classroom coaching, side-by-side co-teaching time. So that is something that we think, okay, that is really working and people seem to like it overall. So we want to expand that model that hasn't really been a part of the 7th through 12th grade opportunities, what we've offered them yet. And we want to expand that because we know that the teachers are asking those coaches back. They want to get into the sign-up list to have that kind of coaching, instructional coaching and support in the classroom. So we know that that is a really good thing to continue. I've brought this little diagram to you before. You saw it when we presented the 3-year PD plan, and this is what we're calling the job embedded professional development. And this is that that foundation was that tandem teaching, and we're going to move it forward. We're going to expand it, and we're bringing it to the PK-12 model. So again, what happens is the content coordinator and the coaches and the teachers, they're selected, they get together, and they learn together. They are provided professional development outside of the classroom. They are brought outside for 2 days, approximately 2 days, to get this theory and practice and planning together. They will plan side by side. Then the coaches leave with the teachers and go to the classroom to practice. They keep working through it till they have success with their students in the context of their classroom. And that whole entire model lasts approximately 10 days, give and take holidays and everything. So then after the coaches leave, the teachers have their administrator, their peers, their PLC to continue this work. And the coaches go on to the next cohort. So that's the basic model of professional development that will take place within the classroom. It's job embedded within the context of the teacher's classroom. It's not just this theory that they leave behind when it's over. So again, like I said, we started these conversations in July, really looking at the coaches reflecting on what they like, what's a struggle for them, how we spend our time, and what we were going to focus on for this year. That was developed within the coaches. They decided what was within the locus of their control for this year. In September and October, we actually surveyed the principals who had the diff position, these part-time coaches that sometimes are in the classroom, sometimes they're part-time coaches. There's a myriad of things they do. And we found that many of the principals said, I like them, but they wanted a little bit of different structure with those coaches as well. So that led us to having more conversation. And in November, December, we were looking at our fiscal reality, what our future implications for the coaches would be, what we knew wasn't working, what we wanted to expand. The coaches came up with they looked through what works in the job descriptions. We matched those to what's currently in the job description or what was missing from each one of the job descriptions. And of course, we continued with our training. So that leads us to this season where we've been working with our union partners. We've been discussing with the administrators, how will this affect them at their sites. We met with the coaches themselves several times and answered their questions, put out FAQs, how they know how it directly affects their day-to-day life and what will take place. There's a lot of words on this tiny page, but basically what I want to show you as the structure of the department itself, me supervising the department and having Kim Newton and Mike Rich and Maricela Mota, they will continue to oversee the content areas that they have. For example, Kim Newton oversees ELA and History Social Studies and our induction program. That's not changing. So what they oversee, because that's their expertise, that won't be changing. But the positions underneath, they have been rewritten. We've deeply reviewed what they need to do. And so I would say we agree that the position has significantly changed from what it used to be to what it will be this coming year. So that's my part, and I am now going to turn it over to Russ.
Good evening, President Marks, trustees, and Superintendent Noguchi. So you can see on the first slide that I was able to align this to the three major goal areas, which is operational efficiency through technology and network infrastructure, implement financial soundness in terms of decisions, and recruit and retain highly qualified staff. So the first area of efficiencies, technology, not for just technology's sake, but ensuring that the softwares get used. From past experience, as well as, it's kind of indicative of a lot of K-12 and private corporations. You buy an application, you spend X amount of dollars, you get trained on 80% of it, and you only retain 20% of it. So that's what this section is, improve efficiencies of existing investments, making sure we get closer to that 80% that you're first trained on an application. But that takes resources and focus. The second one is retention and recruitment. Again, there'll be a slide here in just a second that shows us compared to other districts in terms of staffing, but also we did go out to the market in local districts and see what some of these positions of equal responsibility get in other districts local to us, and they're not the same pay. So the other part of it, we want to hire good people, retain them, and retain good staff that we currently have. So the other purpose of the change, as I mentioned earlier, was applications. And you can break it up into three core areas. First, your core area of operations, which is your financial and student information system. If we don't have those adequately supported, we don't keep the doors open, period. That's it. And the infrastructure for that. There's also ed tech, and you'll see on the org chart where we have a position that's focusing on educational technology. And I also explained to the department is when I first came on board is that what I've seen indicative in all K-12 is there's two areas that drive what the purpose of technology is in K-12, and that's a resource for the classroom. Specifically, I mean data and how to analyze that data, as well as educational technology where you make pedagogical change in the classroom. So that's what I mean about improving our services. The other area is cybersecurity. It's not a matter of if, it's when are you going to get hacked. We're getting hacked every day in some level or form. That's why we have a firewall. But our firewall is about 5 years old, and we want to go to a next-gen type of firewall system, so that's part of it. as well as working with the security at the device level. Because what's your weakest point? It's you and me. It's the end user. So part of the cybersecurity is not just the technology, but it's training for users to know what to click on, what not to click on, giving them better portals so that they can send files not just outside of our district, because that's kind of a given. We want to secure every file that goes out, but even within our district. So there's a lot of, lack of better words, video and in-service training that comes with cybersecurity. And then data analysis, which I mentioned earlier, is because it's data-driven and for good reasons. But we have to have the staff to be able to not only give the layout of what this data means, but also to train administration on how to utilize that data on a daily basis, as well as teachers. So this, let me kind of take a step back. This is from last year's auditor analysis, but it's a comparison in pockets. And what I mean by that is not all districts are structured the same when it comes to technology. They'll just be either a technology department, a technology and ed tech, or technology maybe accountability. So they're not all equal. So what I tried to do with this slide is say, okay, what is the total tech staff without ed tech or senior management? So if you look around, Clovis is about 13,000 more students than we have, but all the others, Lodi, we're all around 30,000. Twin Rivers, Visalia. So you can see overall, we're not too bad. We're doing very well in terms of the staffing level. And this again was about a year ago, but I don't think it's been changed much. Then if you drill down into the site tech, that's the last 6 inches, so to speak. That's the staff that supports the teachers and administration. Significantly higher than the other comparable districts in our area. And then this is the area that I mentioned earlier about cybersecurity, would be in this server networking. So we're significantly lower. So that's one catalyst of why would we reorg and move positions around. Again, this is one of those slides where it's very hard to see. Hard copy will be easier. But this is the current status of what our org chart looks like. You're starting on the left, you have information technology relative to EdTech. Then you have instructional technology, and then software support, help desk kind of roles for the site techs. And on the far right, that's where you get into the network infrastructure and assessments on the very far right. So in a nutshell, this is the recommendation to the board. And we are, you can see the star ones are the new positions. The first one is the digital curriculum. And that's kind of a joint role that Lauren and myself were kind of sharing that capacity in terms of that work. One of it would be one of her staff members underneath her, where they go out and do the planning, the implementation as far as digital curriculum coordination. And this role is what I call, when we get into the middle, talk about a little bit more, is software support. Because one of the first things it says is efficiency. We need to do a better job of helping the teachers out and admin using the software. So this will be more on the curriculum side. They'll be in the office 70% of the time. If I'm a teacher and I can't get through a particular module, or something's not working right in Schoology as far as the setup for starting my new semester, we need someone to be hot on the phone so they're not waiting in a queue, if possible, or at least a few hour response. So that's the first one. The second one on the stars, you move from left to right, is the site technician. We have 40 staff members reporting to one manager. I don't know where that ratio of management works in any organization. It's just not fair to our customers either, as well as staff. So that's why we want to break it out into two managers. One would be focusing on the site technicians to making sure that customer service and the site experience grows, as well as there's some job description changes for those site technicians to be more software driven in their support, meaning helping the teacher out with basics of how to use various applications if they get stuck, as well as a migration that may be coming next year and the year after for Chrome. So that's what that focus is. And then the center is where we get the software support, like I mentioned at the beginning, ensuring that we support the applications that we've invested in, and also analyzing application before they come into our system. And this is a chronic issue I've seen in my last 20 years of experience. We get stuck on the next new module because it provides X and Y, and the vendor says it'll help improve educational performance in certain areas. But we don't take a step back and analyze what we've already bought in the system to see what is the overlap. Are they truly better? If so, do we maybe want to lose one of these applications that does similar work? And that's pretty key right there. In lack of better words, I think these positions can create cost savings by just taking that step alone, as well as effective use of applications. And then you move further over to the right, that's the cybersecurity that I mentioned earlier. That's very critical, as well as an accountability coordinator. And again, it's not just about putting the data in front of the principals and admin and teachers, it's about helping them understand what does it mean, and if we can make systemic change in terms of working with Lauren and educational services for that data. So this, I mean, I'll go through these quickly, and then at the end when we have question and answer. But these are the positions that are going to focus in on educational technology and infrastructure. You can kind of see by their titles: oversight of our core systems, the first position on our left, and then you go all the way to the far right, and that gets into better customer service as well as their security weaved into these positions. Cybersecurity is a focus on this one, as well as dashboard and data. And we have site technician manager, which I mentioned earlier, accountability coordinator, database administrator. And then the last slide is more on the software support again. And you can see that theme throughout this particular slide on all the positions. And they look, some of them are just positions that we've had internally, but the job descriptions are outdated. That's what you'll see with a lot of these, is just they're stale. Like the site technicians was very hardware driven, for example. Some of the application support positions kind of narrowed them down into a channel that wouldn't allow them maybe to help support the overall scheme when a teacher calls or an admin calls. We want to be able to give them to the right person as quickly as possible. So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Tim.
Thank you. Now we have financial services. Financial services is a department within the business services division that handles payroll, accounting, and purchasing. So our goal here, and the reason why we're recommending this, is to increase and improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the departments within financial services. We're proposing 3 new positions be added to our organizational chart. One would be an internal auditor. The second one would be in budget as a fiscal analyst. And then a third would be a senior payroll analyst in the payroll department. The internal audits position would systematically evaluate procedures and implementation of best practices surrounding functions related to payroll, attendance, student body funds, and instructional minutes. If you recall, when the auditor came in December and presented our audit, there was talk about what more could we do to provide guidance for student body funds. But also a big piece of our audit is attendance, instructional minutes. So this individual would make sure that we're implementing our best practices in those areas. The second one would be a fiscal analyst. This person would be in the budget department. Currently, we have 2 people in our budget department for a $500,000 budget. I'm sorry, a $500 million budget. And so this person would provide increased position control oversight. We struggle sometimes with our position control procedures and processes, so we would have somebody dedicated to that module on our financial system. We're not getting out to school sites to do school site visits and training as much as we'd like around the budget and budget development, and also grant monitoring and review. So we see this person being very beneficial in our controls in the budget department. And then a senior payroll analyst. This would be a lead position. We currently have 2 payroll technicians. One is for classified and one is for certificated. This would be a third senior position to the department. That would be a lead position to the other 2. Currently, we do not have cross-training. As I mentioned, one handles classified, one handles certificated. So if somebody is out unexpectedly or out expectedly on a leave, we don't have a system right now for cross-training to get that work done while the employee is gone. This person would provide management unit payroll processing, which is currently being done by the supervisor, I believe, employee leave accruals, overpayment, and wage garnishment. So this just gives us another person within the department to work on issues that are constantly coming up regularly with payroll processing. And then, as Russ mentioned in his department analysis, we too had a financial services department analysis. And the analysis in comparing FTE, or what is called full-time equivalent positions, we were last or next to last in comparable districts. At Modesto City Schools, Clovis Unified School District, Lodi Unified School District, Twin Rivers Unified, and Visalia Unified School District. A second piece of this reorganization proposal is related to Goal 5, and that is recruit, hire, train, and retain high-quality staff. The goals here are increasing pay, I think as Russ talked about in his presentation, on critical positions. And we want to thank the board that There's another position that's not on here, that's payroll supervisor, that as we had a vacancy, the board allowed us to make this change prior to the reorganization. We have our payroll supervisor in the audience. We were able to recruit her from Stanislaus County Office of Education with payroll experience. I believe without that adjustment, we may not have been successful in recruiting somebody that was a sitting payroll person with experience. So we're looking to, in this proposal, there's range increases for our Director 1 of Purchasing, Accounting Supervisor, and Budget Manager positions. Here's our org chart. At the top is Michelle Price, the Senior Director of Financial Services. The green boxes in this case would be new positions. The Director 1 for Internal Audits, that would oversee the Accounting Supervisor and the Payroll Supervisor, and then a Fiscal Analyst position, which would be under the Budget Manager. The third position is here. This is the Payroll Department, how it would look with a Senior Payroll Technician. You can see, as I mentioned earlier, we currently have 2 payroll technicians that are below that green box, providing monthly payroll for classified and certificated staff. And then the Director 1 Internal Audits would be the director responsible for those two departments. Overall savings would be in a bracket. So if you see a bracket, that would be savings for that proposed reorganization. And then you see the item in red that's not bracketed. That would be a cost increase for the 3 positions that are being proposed in fiscal services or financial services. The total of the 3 divisions would be a projected net savings of about $394,000. Next steps would be the next board meeting. We would be asking for approval or authorization of these recommendations. We would need to work with Human Resources and obviously our union partners on some of these positions, communicate with the people that are effective and administration that are affected. And then we would also, in next year, 2020-21, after this gets implemented, we would evaluate the effectiveness of these changes and report it back. So with that, we 3 are available for questions.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, questions? Trustee Newman.
All right, thank you to our 3 members of the cabinet that updated us on all of this. This was great. I have a question for Miss Odell, and that is on, well, and I asked this question of the superintendent. I just don't see it on the chart, but where would PAR fit in?
PAR's actually with HR.
HR. So it wouldn't be under professional development, it would be under HR.
Currently in the contract, it's stipulated as part of the HR department, but there's crossover and linkage between induction, person who coordinated that, and HR as well.
Right, through BITSA.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and a PAR committee.
Okay.
Involving the MTA labor partner.
And so what one of the things I liked particularly on Mr. Selkin's chart was noting these, I think he had them in gray, where there were kind of crossover positions, and so we didn't have islands. So I think that if we see this, I'd like to see that position like being kind of in a gray in a chart, so we could see that crossover a little bit to where that. So when we're proving it, we see the interrelationship between the two, and them not, being silos in the district. Okay, I had one more. Okay, and this is also for Miss Odell, and that has to do with, it's on the chart, the proposed chart. I think this is Mr. Selkin's proposed chart.
Go to Miss Odell's?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay, so it's down in the corner, the very far corner, and it's the refugee liaison. and I know we have a number of refugee students in our district. But one of the things I saw missing there was one of the goals we've outlined is long-term English learners. And so, just wondering if that is enough for one full job, and where would long-term English learners who would be, that's a big issue, and
Great
who would be
question.
directly responsible for that?
So the refugee liaison was created because of a grant we received.
Okay,
So
we have
her
to have a
sp-
body.
So
Okay.
her specific responsibilities are directly for our refugees. We have about 300 currently in our system. Most of them are at Davis and the Language Institute. Not all of them, but
Right,
in
and
general,
Roosevelt.
her and we had to have a body with the grants. That's
Okay.
the way it was written. So she does not work with long term because most of those, I'd say 100% of them are not long term. You have to be in the States for at least 6 years. So we have a director, actually, Director 2 position open, and that's why it's in gray right now over on the very far right hand side. So that person oversees this work. We also have Maricela Mota. She's our interim director right now, and she is overseeing that. And we have our EL coaches that support the teachers in what they need to understand in order to train in the classroom and move them to be redesignated so that they're not long term. So that whole right hand side group over there, they're responsible for that work.
Okay, so
Not
we don't,
one person.
We don't need somebody that's gonna be accountable. They're all accountable for long term, other than maybe the refugee liaison.
Correct. Now, I'll
Okay.
say that we're really considering what this looks like. We just had our FPM review and with our findings and the concerns that they have. So we're still working through what that is. But we know that we have a considerable amount of work to do for our English learners. And so that body of work does belong in that column primarily right now. However, I will say within the job descriptions, we have now added that every single one of the coordinators and coaches will also be responsible to support English learners and what the teachers need to know within the classroom. That was not previously in all of those job descriptions. So now, even more so, we're going to own that body of work together.
Okay, great. I think that was it. Other than I really appreciated the coordinated noting the positions that we're coordinating with the others. That makes sense when we're talking about the technology, and just maybe if we could see a chart with ed services and where the overlap. Where the overlap is there, and then with HR too, just kind of to see how this fits in
Sure.
with the whole overall structure.
Thank you.
Vice President West.
Thank everyone for working on this because this was a lot of work, I could tell. And it's overwhelming. I feel overwhelmed right now with so much information. I'm really happy to hear about the coaches and how we're looking on how to utilize them a little bit better and improve their services, because I think that was lacking. So I'm really happy to hear that. I had just a question at the end on the overall savings. It seems like we're adding a lot of new positions. So do I understand this correctly? Even though we're adding all these positions, we're going to be saving almost $400,000?
Yes.
How is that?
Well, I'll let maybe Russ talk about, or the other division people talk about theirs. But I know we're also going through and we have some positions that are vacant and no longer needed or will be filled. So it's a net savings is what it is.
Okay. So it sounds like we're utilizing the money just a little bit wiser.
Correct.
Okay.
Much so. So in my department, you'll see the 343,000 there. Previously, we had 43.9 FTE, and I'll have Mike speak about that in a little bit. But like I said, we have these very strange configurations of you might have a coach that's a 0.642, and then they have another responsibility of a 1.642 being a coordinator, so they were over the 1.0. But again, them being stretched in those different ways was not the most effective use. So instead of it being a 1.23, now it's just a 1.0. They have one job to focus on. And so there was these little stray FTE, if you will, out there that we combined together to make their focus more focused. And that did save us some of our FTE. Mike, did you want to add anything to that?
I think on the before picture, you said 43 point something FTE, and at the net at the end is about 5 FTE less for the curriculum and instruction PD department. So it ends up at 38. So it's hard to see in that graphic right there, but at the end of the day, compared to where we are now and how many total FTE different it will be in the reorganizations, it's about 5.
Just thank you so much. It sounds like things are going to be tightened up and
Consolidating.
run a lot smoother. And then just one little typo on the last page. The next board meeting is the 24th, I
Yes,
believe,
thank
not
you.
the 21st.
Correct.
So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Lopez.
Well, Ms. Odell, I have a question for you on your reorg. I see here district translator. I know that we have district translators that come to our board meetings, and I only see one. Can you elaborate a little bit more? What is the specific position?
Sure. So Paula, who was here, she was recently hired. You may have noticed many different folks sitting here. That's because we could not fill the position. And so we would have folks from different departments who we knew were biliterate and were available to come in. So Paula is full-time. She's with us. She's fantastic. So she's here with us. That's who you see listed. We have many other services available, lots of other folks that are bilingual. And for example, Paula was out on medical leave. And so you saw some other folks here to support while she was gone. So we've actually made that almost like a sub list for teachers, folks who are willing and able to come in when we have any kind of situation. I think you remember that one Saturday we even called in to our company. So we have 3 or 4 different avenues to ensure that families have appropriate, timely, relevant translation.
So Paula would be
She's our full-time
full-time.
in-house. Mhm.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
So we only have one at the moment.
We only have one at the moment.
Okay.
But again, we have access to over 240 languages at any time we need through Language Link. They're one of our contracts. They're a state contract.
Thank you.
Trustee Brown.
Yeah, I appreciate the effort and the thought that has gone into all of this reorganization and how we can utilize what we have more efficiently and effectively. So really good, solid presentation. One concern that comes to me as I look at reductions in spending are the bodies related to that reduction. So are we shifting employees elsewhere and not really saving money, or are we seeing anyone losing jobs as a result of any of this reorganization?
I'm going to leave that to Mike. Those are great questions.
So when we go through the process, and we've been working with MTA on process and timeline for the ones that impact the certificated, as well as met a couple times with the CSEA relative to more like the IT and fiscal side. But when the positions are advertised and filled for those individuals that are not part of that reorganization, whether by choice or not being selected, we are already planning for ensuring that there's a placement for them in their credentialed area. Among the vacancies, we're planning on making sure that is taken care of through the attrition that we have in terms of vacancies out at the sites.
All right. Trustee Walker.
I only have one question. It's a long-term question. I've been sort of trying to get at this for a while. Now that we've got this IT department broke out, is there a way for us to see technology spending within the budget as a standalone item so that we can see how much is going into technology spending given its price point? It's sort of been a long-standing thing I've been trying to get at for a while. The last time I tried to get somebody to pull a separate budget item out, I got told no, because folks were going to get irritated because they felt I was somehow targeting a group. But I think when it comes to IT and tech and computers and staffing and and servers and firewalls and this and that, it would be nice to be able to see that within the budget as a separate piece versus buried within LCFF or LCAP, where you get this big chunk of pie. But it's everything. How do you break this piece out? I think the last time I tried to add it up myself, Miss Mentor was here and she corrected me. I was $10 million short. But I literally had to go back through 7, 8, 9 years worth of agendas and add up every million. It would just be nice to see. It's not something I need now, but it would be nice to be able to sort of identify something that's Pac-Man-ish. And technology is very Pac-Man-ish on a budget, if that makes sense.
Yes, I mean, we have the ability to capture all of our spending, and one of the good things about what's called the standardized account code structure, or SACS, is it identifies the type of expenditure. So we're able to identify. Now, technology could be subjective to whoever's asking for it. We have a lot of technology purchases in our budget, but we can drill that down into whatever the board or a person wants to identify what's our level of spending for certain areas.
I just know at one point I had a sheet that told me how many devices we had, and we were north of 38,000. At one point we were laying cable and fiber around here all over the place, and that was north of 30, 25 million over the years. Then you mix in the fact that it's aging out, and now we're bringing in a pilot program, and now we need a new firewall, and now we're talking about servers versus clouds versus, because for what it's worth, this is actually my day job. I don't run the NextWorks, but I'm certainly a software engineer that does research and development and understand how these things work. I just think it would be helpful and informative to know how big a chunk of that there is as far as the question. The rest of my stuff is just commentary, but that's just something I've always wanted to be able to see, that I don't think would cause the hullabaloo the last time I asked for somebody to break out a budget item when everybody sort of went nuts and got me in a lot of trouble. This one seems a little bit more innocuous because it's a department, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't see
Let's
any
work on it offline
challenge
at some
with
point
that,
then.
yeah.
I just think it would be helpful to be able to see that within the budget, because it really is sort of a separate animal, and maybe that'll become more relevant when I get to comments and then maybe at a future meeting.
Trustee Irvin?
Yes, I just like to say also I appreciate all the time and effort that went into the reorg, and also it seems when I got from all the information was that this is a proposal to work smarter rather than harder in terms of utilizing our resources more efficiently and more effectively, utilizing the brain power that we have in all of these positions, more effectively. So I do appreciate that. Like I said, I was reading through this and also almost thought we had also a vaping coordinator when I was going down here. It says vapor, PE. I just ran it all together. I said, well, we getting deep into that. We're going to have a vaping coordinator.
That may come in the future, but not now.
That's great.
So I do appreciate all the time and work that went into, strategically, mapping out the reorganizations.
All right, I don't believe I have any questions. I appreciate seeing the financial cost savings. I tried to add it up, and then I was like, oh wait, there's a page that has all that, and so that was really helpful just to see the savings. And then I was like, is this really real? And it is. So that's really good to see how we could reorganize and have the right people in the right jobs with the job descriptions that fit, and have it all formatted in a good way. So are there any questions from the public? Or, comments from the public? Well, I'm sure those will come at a later time. So we appreciate the time. Back to the board, any additional comments?
Thank
Trustee
you.
Walker?
So one of the things I really liked when I saw in here when we talked about the tandem teaching, I think that's something that I've certainly heard from teachers that they like and they feel works well, and I'm glad to see that's expanding. Not just because they like it, but I also think it brings up that partnership level where you talk about looking towards a coworker or someone that you've worked with that can share ideas that have worked with you, and it's an idea that goes all the way back to when I was school site council at USTAC. I don't know if it matters what career you're in, but I think looking over at a coworker and getting some guidance and help is something that's valuable, and it also probably isn't all that expensive, which is helpful. Then for a future board discussion, and it's something I've sort of wanted to get at for a while, and I've talked to it off and on to different board members, we haven't revisited this idea of what we're doing technology-wise since 2011. This was passed as far as future ready, as far as all these different devices, and this entire plan really goes back to 2011, a board that only 2 members were here. And if I go back and look at the dates, I believe that Trustee Newman was fairly new at that point. She might have been here for 10 minutes before she had to vote on that. So that only leaves Trustee Marks. And I think the way I see this is sort of in 2 buckets. How do we view what we're doing with respect to STEM education and STEAM education, which is very different in my mind than fitzing around on a laptop and writing Word documents and taking a test. And come back together as a board and look at that decision process. As you mentioned, taking a step back in applications, what works, what doesn't. I think as a governance team, you also have to take a step back and go, what did we do? What has been the result of that? What could we do better? What could we do different? What have other districts done? I think it's a big conversation, but I think it's worth having. And then I think the other comment I got from a parent that I mentioned in announcements was at the back to school night with a parent that had a student that was older that wasn't coming in at 9th grade. And I caught a complete earful about students wasting time spinning on computers trying to figure out how to use them versus doing homework and learning. And I think that tails into this other conversation at some point that I think is worth having. Otherwise, I appreciate the report. A lot of information. Saving money is a good thing.
Okay, and with that, we will take a break for 10 minutes till, well, 9 minutes until 8:05. So we'll come back at 8:05 and reconvene. So recess. Okay, calling the board back to session. We are on item B5, approval of identification of board members for each graduation ceremony for May 20th. Superintendent Noguchi?
Yes, I was asked by a trustee to bring this graduation schedule to the board meeting to discuss, and so it's before you. I recognize that Cabinet and myself are not on the schedule, so I'm really just going to fill in behind you. So wherever there's holes, then I'll make sure that we have folks available. So just depending upon where you all land, will then dictate where Cabinet and myself will be deployed.
Okay, and I see we have a couple of gaps with Downey and Mark Twain. I didn't know if anybody's schedule had changed. Mine, I am going to be at the U.S. Air Force Academy graduation in Colorado that week. I have a nephew that's graduating, and so I'm flying home Friday morning, so I could do one graduation. I was like, I didn't think I was going to be able to do any of them, but my flight's early enough to make it back in time. So otherwise I'd do a couple more. But Trustee Brown?
So I had originally indicated that I would leave Thursday available in case there was no one covering any event. So I can cover the Downey graduation.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Trustee Brown. Trustee Newman?
When we look at our schedule as we prepare for next year, let's see, am I still gonna be here? No, I think this is my last year. So, but it is a problem that we have all of our largest high schools all on one night.
Yes.
In terms of covering it as a board member, and so maybe we could spread that out. I will be at Modesto High enjoying it as a parent.
Yes, I know. That was, I remember when this happened a few years ago, and I was concerned, how would we, because we usually divvied it up, we took three. All of us took three slots, and so we would try to get to three schools as much as possible, and sometimes you do a junior high and a high school in the same evening because you could hit both of them at the same place. Sometimes they're in the same place, so that was helpful. So I don't know if that's possible to change it, or I didn't know if there's a reason why we had them all but one on Thursday night because of the facilities. I don't know if facilities was a problem.
So what I can say is this year it's locked into the schedule. However, I'm going to challenge Mr. Goodell to work with his staff to ensure that we spread these out. I have to say that the three districts that I was at prior to this, board members had the opportunity to go to every high school graduation. Now, that also allowed for or required graduations to happen a week ahead of time, and then seniors had to come back afterwards because that is also required by law. So this is very compressed. We will work on this for the following year, for 2021, to try to elongate this.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you for the thoughts and plans. Trustee Walker?
I was just going to agree with what both of you said, because I think at last year, at one point, we were sort of talking about that, and I just assumed life gets busy and it's hard to do everything at one time. But it would be nice to be able to sort of get more places than one.
Yes.
And then I will certainly finish out this 5th year with having attended Elliott every single year, because I love my students at Elliott.
Yes. Great.
I don't know if I would have counted for one of them, but I did all my stuff in Germany on a military base. But I have an affinity, and it's just great to see them do well. And if nothing else, I've got that one school every single year. But yeah, it would be nice to be able to get to more.
Yeah. Elliott used to be on Tuesday night. It was the only Tuesday night one. And then all the junior highs and high schools were Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So that's how we used to do it. But I know we did have some issues with stadiums at one point and had to go to MJC. Oh, we're still at MJC twice. I know we went to MJC twice, but now it looks like we are still doing it twice. So it's just fitting us all in all the stadiums. I know that's a little difficult, but I appreciate the conversation over that. Trustee Irvin?
I know I had something on my calendar on that Thursday, but I'm gonna try to see if I can move some things and go to the Downey as well.
Oh, okay.
Over there. My son is a graduate of Downey, so
Oh, great.
try to get over there.
Okay, that's wonderful. All right, well, thank you so much. appreciate that. And we filled in a few more, another slot there, so that's helpful on one of the graduations. So we will, anyone from the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, back to the board. Any other comments from the board? Hearing none, I'm ready to entertain a motion for approval of identification of board members for each graduation ceremony for May 2020. Vice President West made a motion. Trustee Newman seconded that. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
It's been approved. There's unanimously. Moving on to item B6, approval of first reading of proposed draft of board policy 4119.11/4219.11 and 4319.11 sexual harassment, and proposed deletion of board policy 4119.13 and 4219.13 and 4319.13 sexual harassment. And this looks like it is Mr. Henderson. Associate Superintendent Henderson.
Thank you, Trustee Marks. I'll pass it on to Stephen Beauchesne, Supervisor Compliance and HR, to deliver this board policy.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Good evening, Board President Marks, trustees of the board, Dr. Noguchi, and members of Cabinet. I'd like to present for a first reading Board Policy 4119. What is now 11 in the following numbers already mentioned regarding employee sexual harassment policy. This is part of the ongoing board policy and administrative regulation updates that we are doing to align our policies with current gamut language. Most of the changes that you're going to see in this board policy is one, to renumber this particular BP so that it aligns with the number in the gamut codification. The additions are simply additions to align the language with the current gamut language that you see, and the deletions that you're seeing are largely just to reduce, or to eliminate, I should say, redundancies where gamut language has been reiterative of what's already in our the original MCS language. So with that, if there are any questions, I'd like to address those at this time.
Any questions from board members? Seeing none. Anyone from the audience? Seeing none, back to the board for any comments. Trustee Walker?
This is just one of the fun ones. You get a 3 for 1. It only happens in Mr. Henderson's department, but you can get buy one get one 2 free in the HR policies, which is interesting when you read them. Just in the spirit of policy work, it's interesting because it spans all the different label groups, and you get a buy one get 2 free.
I was surprised that it's been since 2003 that we've done this. That was a surprise to me, so glad we're updating it, and I think it's helpful.
Couldn't agree
all
more.
The law changes that we've had recently.
Indeed.
So,
Remember Saturday, we had to get out of the 80s.
That's right. Trustee Newman?
Okay, I had a question about if we could scroll down. Gosh, these things aren't really numbered, but on my sheet it's page 3.
Is it B or A?
Okay, examples. That section right there. Right, you've got it. So scroll down just a little bit. Okay.
The top of the
Yeah,
page
it's where
has
it
a
says
strike through of a note.
examples. Yeah. Okay, and then it's got the 1, 2, 3. Where did that language come from?
So that language is, it was a holdover from the original board policy.
Okay.
And it's really just meant to give some degree of guidance of what sort of conduct would be absolutely violative of the policy. Part of the requirements in terms of providing notice to employees is that they're given some practical examples of the kinds of conduct that would be prohibited.
So the new gamut policy doesn't include that?
Not that language specifically, no. They don't provide examples like that.
Okay, because it is a little odd in relation to the rest of our policies to have those kind of examples that way. And it's so the problem with examples is, well, I didn't do that. So, when you talk about this type of setting, is it can get too narrow? Well, it isn't. it becomes a list of, well, if I don't do that, then I didn't violate the policy. But the policy itself is quite broad and it's contextual in terms of when sexual harassment takes place. And so I'm worried this narrows a policy that's intended to be broad and contextual in terms of what is happening in a situation. So that whole black section there, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it, other than I'm not sure it's necessary, and I'm not sure that it doesn't undermine the rest of it.
It says it right there on the top. It says
but not limited
include, but are not limited.
Oh yeah,
to.
lawyers always put that in. That we write that in every sentence.
That's what I was actually going to point out, but
Yeah.
I think you raise an entirely fair point.
Yeah.
I would agree. What I would say is that if there was an attempt to say that a particular conduct that would violate the law
Yeah.
is not violative of this policy because it's not specifically listed here, yes, we could always rely on the language that this is not an exhaustive list as to what is prohibited. And obviously, we're going to follow what the requirements of the law are regardless.
Right.
What I would say is that, as I noted earlier, these are in here because one of the things that's likely going to be happening is that this policy is going to be given to employees as part of the beginning of the year notices. And we want to reinforce one of the requirements that's listed in the AR, where we are providing practical examples of specifically prohibited conduct.
Okay.
Trustee Brown?
So, just to piggyback on the same issue, one of my concerns in reading those examples is that nothing in those examples references technology. And we know that, especially as we've been dealing with students, online activity and the harassment related to that is rampant in our schools. And I'm sure that there are problems that exist in the adult world as well as the student world. So if we're going to have examples, I want to make sure that we are up to date with our examples, not back to 2003.
Fair enough. I would note that it does refer to sexually explicit emails. However, that obviously does not encompass the entire scope of what modern technology could enable in terms of actions that are violative of this policy. But that's something that we can easily address.
Okay, Trustee Walker?
I think that gets back to Trustee Newman's point as far as making a list. But I think the other thing that I thought about as far as the examples, and you sort of already mentioned it, as part of my every year annual day job program, I have to complete training every year to ensure that I didn't forget what they told me last year about not sexually harassing my coworkers. I assume we're doing that as well, and this example probably gets a bit wider then, and that, again, my presumption would be that you do cover social media and what would be considered out of bounds in a much broader way, because I have to do it every year and I have to sign off on it amongst a whole bunch of other things. But I've never worked anywhere that I didn't have to go through this training on some level, and that list seems to be indicative of what you would see, if that makes sense, as far as sort of a summary question, sort of whatever you want to call it.
We do currently use an online video training resource that we provide to non-supervisory employees. And in the past, what we've done for our supervisory employees is we've had our district legal counsel come out and do the 2-hour presentation. One of the things that we're going to be looking at doing is expanding the supervisor 2-hour training also into a video format, just for the sake of ease and efficiency of delivery to employees. One of the things that those video training resources provide is such practical examples. Now, whether or not it's addressing technology specifically, I'm not familiar off the top of my head with examples specific to technology. What I would say is that it's addressed more generally in terms of visual and verbal forms of sexual harassment.
I would add that the one thing that our training does that I've noticed over the years has happened as this thing sort of progresses is that at the end of our training every year, and I'm part of an educational group, you have to take a test. to acknowledge that you actually understood what you were given, so that there's not a whole lot of wavering out there in the sense that you didn't understand what you were told, and that you took a test and there's a record that you understood what you were given, which may cover some of that. I know it's a tricky bit. I get the assumption I have is that common sense rules the day, and if you get outside of common sense, then somebody ought to check somebody. And my guess is in schools, it's hard to tell, but it's such a tricky bit.
Our training regimen does include a non-graded quiz as part of the training at the end, and then there's also an employee acknowledgement form that they sign and date. One of the things that they acknowledge is that, one, they did go through the training, they understood the training, and that they received copies of the appropriate policies.
Okay, sounds good. We have a higher standard. I have to hit 80%.
So I do actually appreciate the list because it helps especially a younger crowd who may not deem some of these things as offensive at all and now they know these are things you are not supposed to do. So I think it would help just seeing what's happening recently in society. And so if we could add some technology information in there, use of cyber technology, I think it would be helpful. Trustee Newman?
Okay. If we're going to keep that list, then we need to add at the beginning examples of such actions that might constitute sexual harassment in the work or educational setting. Well, it sounds like it's limited to in the work, whereas we know with our devices, like work is going everywhere with us. So like, where is work? And where is the educational setting, because of these things that are so portable, or the phones and such. So we need to broaden that language there. So because it can occur on a work device or work related, but not in the work. So the other issue is I don't see anything about pornography. I know that is a big issue when I've done employment law stuff. So there's just so much stuff they can do in this area that like no list covers it. Like people get really creative. So and that's the problem. So but if I don't see anything about, somebody viewing pornography at work, and that is harassment, that's been deemed that. Unwelcome visual conduct, I guess, but if you're doing it and it's not, there's just so much stuff that you could put into the list. That's what the problem with the list is. So, I guess if we need to modify where the work is and in the work. And so like how we figure that sentence out. I had a hunch this didn't come from Gamut because that's the problem with it. It doesn't reflect the newer way of thinking, and it stood out to me. So my recommendation would be to substantially revise it or delete it.
One thing that we could do is just put in a notation where we talk about any of this conduct being perpetuated or perpetrated with district devices and/or resources.
But if the relationship grew out of a district relationship, I'm not even sure. Like, I'm not sure where that goes either.
In the introductory sentence, we can add another qualifier in there where we talk about including engaging in the below listed conduct here, using district technology resources, devices, etc.
That may be enough. I mean, again, I think we need to consult with counsel on that.
Sure.
Because it hasn't gone through the thought and the vetting that the Gamut bylaws have gone through. So my worry about it all along is just that it narrows it. It might narrow what the intent of the policy is by trying to provide some explicit examples. Well, maybe not, the word explicit shouldn't be used there. Specific. Let's use that. So specific examples, we may actually be narrowing the policy further than we want to.
All right, I think I'm gonna,
Trustee
and this is
Walker?
one of the things I've learned sitting next to Trustee Newman for 4+ years now. I would agree, the lists always make me nervous for exactly that reason. And I don't know if it's possible to sort of put that second, maybe this goes in an exhibit somehow. And so it's exemplary versus part of the policies, which would get it out of the policy, but still have it as an exhibit somehow. I don't know. I have the same concern as Trustee Newman does, only because that's what I've learned reading policies. If you're listing, you got to be very, very careful about how you go about that, because it just generally makes me nervous. If you can't get the complete list versus a non-complete list versus an arbitration versus an argument versus a fight versus an appeal and all the different things we hear about back there. So yes, I would agree. The lists make me nervous.
Okay, as one who doesn't like lists either, I appreciate the examples for people who need that to give them information. So that's
Could it
my
be
only.
but could it be in an exhibit in the back? We have policies with exhibit pages.
True. Yeah, I don't know if it goes in the AR or not, but Trustee West.
I'm fine with the list as well. I do like the recommendations to include the technology and update, maybe give some more specifics to the wording of where the examples might occur. But other than those two suggestions, I would be fine with the list.
All right, so do you have some direction on that? And then shall we vote on the list, this section of it? I guess we could vote on this and then we can vote on the whole. I'd rather not have this not pass if there's, I don't know where everybody else is at because I haven't heard from all of you. But so we'll vote on this list in black on page B of this sexual harassment one, with the modifications of adding technology and generalizing, I guess, that first introductory statement. So all those in favor, I need a motion to, all right. So that's a motion by Trustee, Vice President West. Trustee Brown, I'm sorry, I was looking down.
So I have a little bit of concern with the list being specific to the work or the education setting, because so much of what happens on social media between individuals doesn't happen in the workplace. And it doesn't happen on a work device. It happens on a personal device. And it's still harassment even after the time clock is finished. If it involves any two people in a workplace. So
That I would agree. If we're talking about a situation that takes place outside of work, but it still has a profound impact on the person's professional environment or a student's educational environment, there would be, generally speaking, a sufficient nexus where action can be taken either administratively on behalf of us as an employer or administrators overseeing a student's education to take remedial action to alleviate whatever the sexually harassing conduct may be. It's no different than, I'll give an example. If you have two employees who were romantically involved, there was a separation, and then comments are being made on social media, which are then getting to colleagues in the work environment, there would be potentially a reachable issue where the district, as an administrator, may need to intervene.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
To address exactly that in the first paragraph of where, we had already said that, where it takes place, and the technology piece.
Yes.
I would be comfortable with the list adding that, clarifying that, adding the technology piece. That's what I'm moving.
All right, so it addresses both.
Do we have to wordsmith this out right now, or?
No.
So he'll bring it back to us, and so, and we will, that was a motion.
My pleasure.
Is there a second? I'll second it. So all those in favor of passing this with the modifications to it, passing this section with the modifications to it, please raise your hand. So it doesn't pass. So that there's all those opposed to it. Maybe there's abstentions. So there's 3, 4. Okay, so they're opposed. You're opposed to keeping this paragraph, this section.
I thought we were voting on.
So we're.
That option. I wouldn't want to vote on something until I saw what came back.
Oh, so okay, so Mr. Lopez would like to see what comes back. So let's take. Are we okay with tabling this and bringing it back with the verbiage?
So how long ago was this policy? When was it? 2000 what? What was it? 2003. So I guess we need direction. Are we working with the list? Or are we not working with the list? And then yes, we will come back for a second reading. But I think that's you guys need to define for us if we want the list or if we don't want the list.
And I thought that's what we voted on, which was my vote was no on the list.
Correct.
And so my vote was you were the yes vote on the list. So I think we just voted on that. So I think the list goes. I think unless you guys didn't have the same vote. My vote was a no on the list.
Yes.
You want to recall that vote so you can just recount this again so everybody's clear?
They were adding to the list.
Why
Social media, so I'm like, okay.
Why don't you redo this? You've got a first and a second. Let's redo this so that everybody's clear.
Okay, wait. Okay, did
About
Trustee
that.
Brown need to say
be perfect.
something? Yes.
So I asked a question before, is if this list wasn't more appropriate in an AR.
There is similar language in the administrative regulation.
So I would suggest that we delete the list from the policy and strengthen the list in the AR.
Look at there. There's a compromise to be had.
Okay. So I'm believing that.
Do you want to change your vote?
Did you want to change your vote to keep the list or not?
I'll just re-motion it like you just said.
Okay. So we've already
So we have
removed it. Or
I'll make a motion to approve the board policy without the list, with the caveat that it gets strengthened in the AR, which we'll see in a second reading.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved by Trustee Walker, seconded by Trustee Newman. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. I prefer that it's in the board policy. I feel like it's stronger, and the employees know that it's a board policy, not an administrative regulation. Okay, so that is removed. So now we will go on to vote on the actual policy. So
No, we just voted on it.
we just voted to take it out. Okay. Oh, you're right. Yes, you're right. I apologize. I knew that.
So
brain
just
went to-
just for my own clarification, when we're talking about strengthening the list language in the AR, there are two specific things that I've highlighted that need to be addressed. One is adding more clarity to the scope of what constitutes the work or educational setting. And then two, we want to incorporate more examples involving modern technology, social media, et cetera. Is that correct?
Yes, and pornography.
And pornography. And with respect to pornography, we're talking about in a sexually harassing context, not in an appropriate use of district technology context, correct? So, okay.
Yes.
I would think it wasn't, doesn't, I mean, you would tell me, you're the lit lawyer, but in my training, the example we're given is if you do something that makes somebody uncomfortable, then you've crossed a boundary.
Yeah.
I think that's still the sort of, that's that threshold. So if you're sitting at your desk doing something, or you're at your office, or you're in the break room, and you've had a brain snap that's got you doing something, I want to leave it that qualified.
That would
be Newman. Yes.
That would be what I would understand as well. So if it's just if you've made somebody uncomfortable with it.
Okay, so dissemination or viewing in a way that others can see you viewing it. The kind of okay.
Somebody come over to my desk. Look at this. You know.
Or no, just doing it in a work setting.
Gotcha.
Even on their own device.
So that's that test I have to get for 80% every year. It pays off.
So we have the one for the students and another one, because I know I've had complaints from parents with a teacher who did that and would turn his computer so that the student, he obviously tried to make her feel uncomfortable, but anyway, so that was a complaint from someone, and I didn't know that's not sexual harassment between employees, but it is between a teacher and a student. So moving on to item Do you have, is it clear enough?
I think I've got it.
All right,
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. All right. Moving on to item B7, approval of the first reading of proposed deletion of board policy 6141.1, services to limited English proficient students. And this goes to Associate Superintendent Odell.
That's correct.
Okay.
So this is just a deletion because we have already approved updated wording. The updated board policy is actually numbered 6174. That was approved, I believe, in October. So this is redundant and old language. It just took us a while to actually, because the numbers were so different, cross-reference, ensure that it was addressing the same thing. And now it's just time to delete the old board policy.
Okay. So okay. Are there any questions? Hearing none, back to the board. So we have a motion from Trustee Newman to approve the deletion of this board policy 6141.1. Do I have a second? Seconded by Trustee Lopez. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Moving on to item B8, approval of first reading of proposed revisions to board policy 6143, courses of study.
Okay, and with this board policy, we took it to you earlier and we had your edits prepared and completed. However, between that time and now, FPM asked us to adjust some language, and we felt that it was better to just bring it back to you as a first read again, since there was some significant language adjusted as required by the auditor. So if you will notice here, towards the bottom of the page, there's a arrow with black wording. That is what they have asked us to utilize.
I smell smoke as well.
Smell the smoke as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. All right.
He's gonna
Okay,
go.
they're just checking.
He's gonna
for a
go close
moment.
it.
Okay, we'll take a moment
Sure.
break here while we check on that.
Coming from out there, but not back there.
It might be from, there was a large fire down by, and it might have just reached here, but it was by yeah, it was out in Wood Colony this afternoon. I know, it was obviously it was a structure.
No,
Yes.
that's fine.
Okay, so you can complete, your
So
discussion.
what you'll see there is right above the black font was a paragraph that we had included. They asked us to delete that and use the language that is in the black font. Any other strike-throughs were from what you previously asked us to edit out and or adjust, and we have done that. So the only change is remove that large paragraph on the bottom of page 1, and then replace it with the black font there.
Okay, so that's the only change on this. So, are there any questions from board members?
Shoot one.
Trustee Walker?
I guess it's the same question that comes up with the FPM stuff. Do we know how that conflicts because this is Fed versus state? In the sense that, correct? Because we're dealing with FPM, which is federal, right?
That
How
is
does that,
correct.
and the previous language looks much more state-like in our California state of mind. I don't know if it's a huge deal. It's just the one thing I thought about when you brought it up is there a conflict?
There is no conflict. What I would say is that we recently approved board policy 0410, and we have a copy of the first page that's in front of you. So this is more, since we've just approved that, it's aligned with that one in the exact language there. So BP 0410 spells out who the protected classes are, and now this board policy 6143 references that directly. So we've already spelled out who are those protected classes.
Good enough. That works. Thank you.
Okay. So are there any questions from the, comments from the audience? Seeing none?
So
Back to
moved.
the board. Trustee Walker makes a motion. Trustee, well, I saw Trustee Irvin. So Trustee Irvin seconds it. All those in favor of Board Policy 6143 with the changes that have just been made, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. And then moving on to item D28 or B8A, which is formerly D28. This is the AR. Let's see if I can find it. With the same numbers. So I asked to have this one put with it because when I was looking through it and I realized we did not have a parent or guardian consent on it. And when I had looked up one of the references on here just to see the definition of some of the items, I noticed that I ran across some other districts that had this in their board policy, even though this is the AR. But here is my suggested paragraph to add to it on parent guardian consent. We do this it's in the law, but it's in our, wait, let me pass 3 of these. In our student handbook, but I thought it would be helpful to have it in our board policy.
Oh, nice catch.
In the AR.
Do you have one too?
Yes, hang on, here we go, there's 2 more. So the suggested paragraph would say, and I lined out this section because it said it was specified in accompanying administrative regulation, but if we put this in the administrative regulation, annually, it's parent guardian consent. Annually, parents, guardians shall be notified that they may request in writing that their child be excused from participating in HIV/AIDS prevention and comprehensive sexual health education. Students so excused by their parents, guardians, shall be given an alternative educational activity, and they were referenced in that ed code. And CF 5022 states, for student and family privacy rights, a student shall not be subject to disciplinary action, academic penalty, or other sanction if the student's parent or guardian declines to permit the student to receive the instruction. So I was just asking to have this added in, but I was trying to find the best place to put it. And
So this also does align with what is in our handbook, and it is the law. So it's not, I mean, we have to abide by this. So what Trustee Marks is asking for is just adding the law into this board policy for ease of use for parents.
I would argue that if you're looking for a place to put it,
it would go right after
it
that.
would go down to the 7 through 12, because if memory serves me correct, we pulled that entire section out of the K through 7.
Yes.
Or K through 6. And so it would be in the 7-12 section where it gets to the HIV prevention.
Right, comprehensive sexual health and HIV prevention at number 10. I believe it's in number 10, yes. So right after number 10.
And then I guess my comment would be that as a parent who's done this, I can assure you they do not appreciate it.
Oh, if you asked
It was not appreciated.
Yes.
I don't know what retribution is, but it didn't go well. I think what I found is that, what is it, stay away from grading policies and stuff? We excused, we got it, we got a different assignment. I think we followed that up with like 3 Ds.
It's number 10, it's on.
It was
F.
highly not appreciated
Page
by the
F.
teacher.
Right on page F.
So it would go right under 10?
Yes, yes, right after the abstinence may not be discussed in isolation, and then right after that, add the paragraph, parent and guardian consent.
I got that covered at home.
And then the student and family privacy rights. So you're all okay with that? All right, so with that, I'll entertain a motion. Or is there anyone from the public wishing to comment? Seeing none? I think he's asleep back there. Seeing none, back to the board. Oh,
I'll make one comment. The good thing is that apparently if I do something, the good thing is I get treated the same as any other parent. So when they get mad at me for opting my kids out, or the secretary, there's no difference in how they treat a board member than a regular parent. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but.
Okay, it's been moved by Trustee Walker, seconded by Vice President West. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. On to item B. Oh, wait a minute. Let me get my paper back here. Item B9, approval of vote for no more than one candidate for CSBA Delegate Assembly 2020. Trustee Newman.
Okay. I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in this one.
Okay.
Ever since I've been on this board, we have not had a representative on the CSBA.
Nope.
And we have had a number of us that keep trying to get on. And, well, none of the other districts vote for us. So I'm for voting no on anyone else. So, not because I have anything against Cindy Lindsay, but just to make a statement.
It's Fay Lane, not Cindy
Phelan,
Lindsay.
okay.
Fay Lane.
It's
Series.
one or the other.
Okay.
And, but just to kind of make a statement that, you know what, that we're the largest school district in this area, and we can't seem to get anybody else on this board. And it's been 9 years. So, my vote is we don't vote on any of them, and we say no.
Okay, Trustee Walker.
You know I agree. I've tried multiple 3 years in a row maybe. This will be the first year I haven't tried. I've actually written letters to CSB and asked that they look at their bylaws because it's janky. Because if you actually count all of our students from the beginning to the end of the alternative ed, we meet the 30,000 requisites. They're not counting. I find it highly frustrating because they're only counting certain parts. And you're exactly right. I have never gotten past go, and so I would agree no on all of them.
So I'm just going to make a comment on that, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Irvin. So I happened to run when I was elected and got on as a delegate and stayed on as delegate, and anyway, was on for a while and was able to become president of CSBA. But I do recognize that the numbering system, I was on the committee to review the numbering system, made some suggestions that they change it. We lost 8 delegates this year for districts that went below 30,000. And so they did lose many delegates just as we did a few years ago, I guess 9 years ago. And so it is a bit frustrating. I actually believe Fay Lane is a really good delegate. She does her homework. She gives her opinion. She's very supportive of our district in many ways in how she talks about the things that are done at CSBA. So I go to their meetings, but because I am a delegate. I'm actually a delegate, and I'm an at-large delegate because I was past president, but that's neither here nor there on this item. So Trustee Irvin.
I'm going to join my colleagues with a rebel with a cause. And vote no.
Okay, Trustee Brown.
I happen to work with Fay Lane on a county committee, and so I cannot vote no because I know how hard she works.
She does. I agree with you on that. So,
and my statement again is not against
I
her.
know
It's
it's
just
not.
against this process. And
Process
so
and the system.
that's right. It's fight the power. So
No, because, and you're exactly right, because the argument I made was we're the largest school district in the county. Why would we not have a representative on CSBA being, I don't care what your number is. I'm sorry we're not LA County or San Jose. But I just thought it was unfair, and so I would concur. And I lost that battle, and I took it all the way to the president and the chief executive officer, and they still told me to go take a walk.
I know. Okay, so ready to entertain a motion?
I move we vote for no one.
Okay. So it's been moved by Trustee Walker to vote for no one, seconded by Trustee Newman. All those in favor, please raise your hand. So we have 3 that voted
No.
No. So all those opposed to his motion, please raise your hand. Aye. Okay, now, new motion, because it fails to pass. So new motion, need a new motion to pass voting for this, because we just voted not to vote for any, we just voted to vote, but we didn't vote for who to vote for. So we need a motion to vote for Fay Lane, or you could do a write-in. You can do a provisional write-in. So that gives you an opportunity to do that. Does anybody want to write in their name on this? You will get probably 1 vote. All right, I'm making a motion to pass for Fay Lane, though I like the idea of rebelling, but I will not tonight. So I make a motion that we vote for Fay Lane as the delegate for a 2-year term for CSBA. So Trustee Brown seconds that. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Aye. So there's 4 of us said yes. All those opposed?
No.
3 noes. So the 3 dissensions are Irvin, Walker, and Newman. All right. Thank you very much. And now, let's see. That is all. We don't have any items for future business. I know we used to put that on here, but it isn't on here anymore.
It is
Oh, it's on. Okay, it's just not on my sheet.
the last, right before the adjournment.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, right. So it's not on this page. All right. So are there any items for future agendas? Seeing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Walker, seconded by Trustee Newman. All those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. A lot of exciting discussions.